Have you ever felt like something inside you is screaming but no one can hear it? Like the world is moving along outside, but inside you, everything is silently falling apart? That feeling of tightness in your chest, the lump in your throat, the invisible weight on your shoulders? It's not just tiredness, it's something deeper. It's anxiety. An anxiety that consumes you, traps you, paralyzes you. And the worst part, you try to hide it, you try to smile, you try to move on, but inside you're begging for help. Maybe no one knows this, but Jesus knows, and he speaks to you now. Yes, you are there, tired of fighting battles that no one sees. You didn't come to this video by chance. There is a truth that has been ignored by many, but today, it will be revealed. A truth that can free your heart and bring relief where there was only torment. But first, I want you to stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel this moment, because something is about to happen. Something that can transform the way you see your pain. Imagine being on a boat, in the middle of a storm. The wind pushes you, the waves threaten you, and it seems like at any moment everything is going to sink. This is what anxiety looks like, an invisible storm. But what if I told you there was someone in that boat with you? Someone who isn't panicking, someone who looks you in the eye and says, "Why are you so afraid? I'm here." Jesus speaks to you, and he does not speak with guilt, nor with judgment. He speaks with healing, with liberation, truly, with love. Most people never realize this, but today you will. You will understand why this anxiety seems to overwhelm you. And more than that, you will discover what Jesus himself has to say about it. And it's not what you're expecting. This message is not a theory. It's a rescue, a breath of life in the middle of your storm. So if something inside you is saying, "I need to hear this all the way through," it's because God is speaking to you right now. And if you feel this word touching you, click the like button, so other people who also need healing will find this video. Enjoy it with faith, share with purpose, and prepare your heart, because what Jesus will reveal now could change everything. He's here, and he speaks to you. Take a deep breath, open your heart. This moment is yours alone, an instant between you and God. No matter where you are or what you're facing, Jesus speaks to you now. And when he speaks, something changes, something aligns within the soul, because he not only understands your pain, he carries it with you. You know that tightness you feel in your chest? This anguish that you can't even explain? Jesus knows. And more than that, he is ready to touch, heal, and transform. But before continuing, I want you to participate in this moment with me. You are not a spectator. You are part. You are not here by chance. Jesus brought you here for a reason. Maybe this word is the answer to why you have been praying in silence. And if so, write in the comments, "I trust in Jesus," because your comment might be exactly what someone on the other side needs to read right now. Words loaded with faith have power. Don't underestimate this. And if this message is already touching your heart, click the like button, not for me, but for YouTube to take this video to other people who are suffering in silence. This simple gesture can be an act of evangelization. It can be the bridge for someone to receive a word of liberation. And if you haven't signed up yet, sign up now, because each new video here is a seed of healing, a step towards spiritual restoration. Jesus speaks to you, and this channel exists to echo that truth. And now, get ready, because what comes next will reveal something that could change the way you cope with anxiety. Jesus warned something very important about this situation, and you need to hear it before leaving this video. The next story will touch on a point you may never have realized, but which could be the key to the relief your heart so desperately needs. Imagine darkness covering everything, a closed sky, the wind howling as if screaming at you, and the waves rising like monsters about to swallow your hope. You are on a boat too small, too fragile, in the middle of a raging storm. This is how many feel when they think about tomorrow. Anxiety about the future is like this turbulent sea, unpredictable, threatening, constant. And within this scenario, there is the silence of those who look at the sky and ask themselves, "Where is God when I need him most?" But in this story, something happens that changes everything. Jesus is there, in that same boat, not screaming, not running, not despairing. He's sleeping. Yes, sleeping. And the disciples, seized by panic, shout, "Master, do you not care if we perish?" They weren't just afraid of the water. They were afraid of what they couldn't control, what they couldn't predict. of what tomorrow would bring. It was more than fear, it was despair. And then Jesus stands up, not in a hurry, not afraid, but with authority. And he says to the sea, "Be still, be still." And immediately, the wind stopped, and there was a great bonanza. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Mark 4:40. This question crosses time and reaches us today as a whisper straight to the heart. Because fear of the future is one of the greatest thieves of peace. Have you ever felt this way? As if you were in control of absolutely nothing. As if the next step was a threat and not a promise. Maybe you're in that boat right now. Maybe everything around you is falling apart and your soul is screaming for safety, for answers, for reassurance. But what if I told you that Jesus is in the boat with you? That even when it seems like he is silent, he is still there? Anxiety makes you believe that you are alone, that you need to take everything into your own hands, that the future is an enemy to be defeated. But Jesus speaks to you, he's on the boat, he sees the storm. And more than that, he has power over her. It is no coincidence that this story begins with an order from Jesus. Let us cross over to the other side. He knew what was coming, but he also knew that his destiny was assured. The problem is that along the way we forget the promise and can only look at the chaos. Anxiety is exactly that, the loss of spiritual vision. And when that happens, the soul drowns in fears that aren't even real yet. They're projections. These are storms that haven't even arrived yet, but are already making us sink inside. How many times do you wake up with a heavy heart thinking about everything that could still go wrong? How many sleepless nights trying to imagine what tomorrow will be like? How many hidden tears because you feel like you need to have answers, you need to be strong, you need to keep everything under control? But perhaps today Jesus is asking you the same thing he asked those disciples. Why are you so afraid? Fear is natural, but faith is supernatural. And faith doesn't deny the wind. It just reminds you that there's someone bigger than the wind in your boat. And this awareness changes everything, because knowing that Jesus is present is not a cliche. It's an anchor. It's the only certainty in a world that changes every second. Anxiety makes you believe that everything depends on you. But faith reminds you, everything is in his hands. If this word speaks to you, write in the comments, "Jesus is in my boat." And remember, your comment could be the encouragement that someone on the other side of the screen needs to read right now. It could be the sign that a desperate heart asked God for so much. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there are pains that do not arrive with the force of a storm, but with the silence of a morning. And that's where many people sink without even realizing it. Have you ever woken up with a feeling of heaviness that you can't explain? Before you even open your eyes, your heart is already tight. It's as if the day has barely started and you're already tired. Not physically, but inside. A tiredness that comes from the soul, that carries thoughts that you don't even know where they come from. Anxiety, restlessness, an anguish that suffocates in silence. You get up, do what needs to be done, but your insides scream for rest. This feeling of waking up with a knot in your chest is more common than you might think. And even those who seem to have everything under control often experience this pain in silence. And it is in this scenario that we find Jeremiah, a prophet of God, faithful, dedicated, but deeply downcast. In Lamentations, he expresses his pain. In raw, real words, "I remember my affliction and my delirium, my bitterness and my grief. I remember it all well, and my soul faints within me." Lamentations 3:19-20. Can you feel the weight of these words? Jeremiah is describing exactly this state, the soul fainting. And it wasn't because he had turned away from God. On the contrary, it is possible to be at the center of God's will and still feel pain, feel anguish, feeling empty at dawn. But what comes after these words is even more powerful, because Jeremiah decides to change the focus. He chooses to remember something that has nothing to do with the chaos around him, nor the pain within him. He writes, "I want to bring to mind what can give me hope. The Lord's mercies are the cause of our not being consumed, for his mercies have no end. They are new every morning, great is your faithfulness." Lamentations 3:21-23. In other words, Jeremiah is saying, yes, I am mired in pain, but I will choose to remember who God is. And that changes everything, because when you start the day remembering the bad news, the worries, the bills, the conflicts, what you lack, the soul sinks. But when you choose, even in tears, to remember God's faithfulness, something begins to align within you. Have you tried doing this? Instead of waking up and checking your phone or diving right into the anxiety of the day, simply stop, breathe, and remember, the mercies of the Lord are new upon me today. It's not easy. It's not automatic. But it is a spiritual decision, because anxiety wants to dictate the rhythm of your day. But the Holy Spirit wants to remind you, first thing in the morning, that you are not alone, that the day may begin in silence, but God is already speaking to you, that He has already prepared provision, comfort, and strength for what will come. Sometimes our mistake is waiting to feel peace before believing, but the truth is that faith comes first. Jeremiah didn't say that after everything was over. He said amidst the chaos, in the middle of the ruins, at rock bottom. And that's the beauty of faith. It doesn't depend on the scenario. It stands on what God has already declared. Maybe today you woke up exactly like this, with a tired soul, and maybe that's your prayer. Lord, I don't know how to go on, but Jesus speaks to you now, and He says to you, my mercies are renewed upon you at this very moment. This is not just biblical poetry. This is real life. It's relief for those who already wake up overwhelmed. It is a balm for those who cannot find words. And it is also an invitation to start the day differently. Start by remembering that even if everything seems the same, something invisible and eternal is already moving within you. God's love does not take vacations. His faithfulness does not end, and mercy does not depend on your merit. It is renewed because He is good. Point. If this message found you in your most difficult dawn, write in the comments, I receive God's mercies today. And remember, this declaration of faith could be the hug that someone needs to receive right now when reading it. Don't keep it just for yourself. Share this hope, but that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there are pains that don't come with the dawn, but with the suffocation that sets in without warning. And when you least expect it, it seems that even breathing has become difficult. Have you ever tried to take a deep breath and felt like the air wasn't coming in? As if there was an invisible weight squeezing you inside, preventing you from even breathing. There is an anxiety that does not scream, but suffocates. That doesn't warn you that it's coming, but installs itself like a silent prison. It's the kind of anguish that seems to occupy every inch of your chest. You try to distract your mind, change your focus, but nothing seems to work, because it's not something that comes from the outside. It's something that's inside, slowly eroding. Job knew this pain, a man of integrity, justice, God-fearing, but at a certain point in his life, he was thrown into the deep end of existence. He lost his children, his health, his friends, and as a result, he almost lost his own peace. In chapter 3 of his book, Job expresses something that many are afraid to confess. What I fear comes upon me, and what I fear happens to me. I have no peace, no quiet, no rest. I have only restlessness. Job 3:25-26. This is one of the most human statements in the Bible. Job was completely overcome with anxiety, and it wasn't "I'm a little worried" anxiety. It was an emotional storm, a raw pain, a collapse of the soul, and perhaps you are in that place right now. The feeling of emotional suffocation is not just psychological, it's spiritual too. It's as if the soul screams for help while the body tries to maintain the appearance of normality. You may be in a work meeting, with your family, in traffic, and inside, you may be fighting thoughts that tell you that nothing makes sense anymore. It's as if something is about to fall apart, even though externally everything seems under control. What no one sees, God sees. And Jesus speaks to you at this very moment. He knows that feeling of suffocation, because even though He was the Son of God, He also went through moments when His heart sank and His sweat turned into drops of blood. Anxiety is real, but it's not the end of the story. Job, even in the midst of his pain, ended up being surprised by something he didn't expect. God began to speak to him, and the voice of God came not to judge but to restore. Liberation began in the midst of chaos, and that's exactly where healing begins. When you, even suffocated, decide to remain. There is something very profound here. Job says that what he feared most happened. This reveals something important. Fear has the power to fuel anxiety. When you feed your worries every day without bringing the presence of God into them, it is as if you give power to the storms before they even form. And what Jesus wants to teach you today is exactly the opposite. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. The relief you seek is not in control of your circumstances. It's on delivery. It's about stopping trying to overcome anxiety with logic and allowing the Holy Spirit to begin breathing for you. Yes, breathe. Because He breathes life where there is despair. He breathes calm where there is storm. He breathes faith where fear screams. If you have ever felt suffocated inside, write in the comments, "Jesus, breathe for me." Your comment could be the key that will open the door for another heart to find relief today. Share this request with faith, and if this word is touching your heart deeply, click the like button now. This simple gesture could be the bridge that God will use to reach someone who is about to give up. Don't underestimate the power of a purposeful click. Like with faith, share with love. But what happens next could change the way you see everything. Because there are times when pain doesn't just suffocate your chest, it begins to attack your very identity. And when you no longer know who you are, fear turns into paralysis. What if the biggest root of your anxiety is not the situation, but the doubt about who you really are? Because when you lose your sense of self, everything around you becomes more threatening. And that's exactly where the insecurity that paralyzes you, stops you from moving forward, screams inside you, "I'm not capable. I'm not enough." This was exactly the moment Moses experienced. The same man who was preserved from birth, set apart for a purpose, raised in Pharaoh's palace. And yet, when God calls him to deliver the people, he looks at himself and responds, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Exodus 3:11. Look at this question carefully. It wasn't, "I don't want to." It was, "I can't," because Moses did not see in himself what God had already placed. And maybe that's exactly what's happening to you. Maybe you're trying to live your entire life carrying a question that should never define you. Who am I? This insecurity, when it turns into anxiety, makes you question every step. It makes you hide. And the most painful thing, it makes you believe that God chooses others, but not you. It makes you feel spiritually invisible, as if only the strong were called, as if you were in a separate group, those that God tolerates but does not use. But what if I told you that God's greatest act of love is precisely to call the unlikely? That the gospel is the good news that the weak are strengthened, the timid are given courage, and the forgotten are remembered by heaven? Moses was not chosen by chance. He had a past marked by escape, by guilt, by fear. But God looks at him and doesn't say who you were, nor what you feel. God says, "I am that I am, and I will be with you." Because when God sends someone, He doesn't trust that person's strength. He trusts in His presence with that person. And that changes everything. Have you ever felt this way? As if everyone around you knew exactly what to do, but you were stuck in front of your own limitations? As if each step requires courage that you don't know where to get it from? This type of anxiety is not about the outside world. It's about the world inside. It's when the mind screams doubts that the heart can't silence. But Jesus speaks to you now. He says, "You are not what anxiety says you are. You are who I say you are." And what He says is chosen, loved, empowered, forgiven, useful, valuable. Hell tries to erase your identity because it knows that when you discover who you are in Christ, nothing can stop you anymore. And maybe today, this moment, this video, is the beginning of a turning point in your soul. Because it's not about self-help. This is spiritual truth. When you understand that you are a child, and not a slave to fear, something begins to blossom within you. Don't wait to feel ready. Moses was not there. Don't wait for insecurity to disappear to obey. Obey even if you are trembling. Because it is in this space between "I can't" and "God is with me" that miracles happen. It's not about having an impeccable resume. It's about having an available heart. The Lord is not looking for those who have all the answers. He is calling on those who have the courage to respond, even with a trembling voice. And He is calling you. If this message touched your identity and awakened something within you, write in the comments, "I am who God says I am." It could be exactly this statement of faith that a hurting heart around the world needs to see, to remember that they are loved too. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because sometimes, anxiety comes not from doubts about who we are, but from the need to control everything. And when we lose control, we feel like we've lost everything. But was it really you who needed to control? Have you ever had the feeling that if you don't take care of everything, everything will fall apart? as if the entire world depended on your hands, your vigilance, your ability to keep everything under control. There is an anxiety that arises exactly there, in the fear of losing control over life. You run, plan, try to predict every detail, avoid risks, look for answers, review scenarios, but still your heart finds no rest. Because no matter how hard you try, something inside you says, "What if I don't make it?" Martha knew this. Feeling well. In Luke 10, we see the scene where Jesus visits her home, a moment that for many would be the height of peace. But for Martha, it was the trigger for restlessness. She ran from side to side, trying to serve, organize, prepare everything. And at the height of her agitation, she turns to Jesus, and instead of worshiping him, confronts him. "Lord, don't you care that my sister leaves me to serve alone? So tell her to help me." Luke 10:40. And Jesus' response comes as a mirror for everyone who experiences this same conflict. "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things." This speech by Jesus is an invitation to the anxious heart that tries to resolve the world with its own hands. And the most profound thing here is realizing that Martha was not doing anything wrong in the eyes of logic. She wanted to serve, she wanted to do right. But the problem wasn't what she did. It was in how much she tried to control, how much its value depended on its productivity. And perhaps, without realizing it, you have fallen into the same trap. You measure your worth by how much you can handle, for the list of tasks you can complete, due to the number of problems it can solve. But what if true liberation is not in doing more, but in delivering more? Jesus speaks to you now, and he does not speak to accuse you, but to set you free. He looks you in the eye and says, "You don't have to carry the world. That's not your burden. The control you try so hard to maintain is robbing you of peace. And what the Lord wants to teach you is that letting go is not giving up. It's trusting." Martha needed to understand that the best part wasn't the clean dishes, the organized house, the fulfilled schedule. The best part was at his feet. And that was what Maria had chosen. A choice that does not depend on circumstances, but on priority. When the priority is Jesus, chaos may continue around, but the soul finds rest. Have you ever wondered how many nights you wasted trying to solve what only God can fix? How many times have you stopped living in the now for fear of what could go wrong tomorrow? This pattern is exhausting you, and Jesus speaks to you: surrender, trust, rest. I am in control, and he really is. The same God who brought order to the chaos of creation is the God who is now bringing order within you. But to do that, you need to leave the center. You need to take the weight of perfection off your shoulders and place it in the hands of the Father, because it is he who sustains all things, including you. If this word found you trying to control the uncontrollable, write in the comments, "Jesus, I deliver," because this surrender could be the key to the liberation your heart needs. And your comment could be the courage someone else needs to also deliver. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there is a pain even more silent than the attempt to control. It is feeling invisible even when you are surrounded by people. And that touches much deeper places in the soul. Hagar walked alone. The desert sun was relentless, the ground burned beneath her feet, and each step felt like a silent scream that said, "No one cares." Abandoned, humiliated, rejected, she carried more than a pitcher of water. She carried the deep pain of someone who was discarded, used and forgotten. A foreign woman, pregnant, fleeing a home where she found nothing but contempt. And there, in the middle of nowhere, when all paths seemed closed and the soul folded under the weight of abandonment, something extraordinary happened. In Genesis 16, God finds her. Yes, God goes to her. He does not send a messenger. He doesn't call her back through dreams. He appears. And there, in the middle of the desert, one of the most profound revelations in Scripture is born. "You are the God who sees me." Genesis 16:13. How many times have you felt like Hagar? Alone, invisible, as if no one noticed your pain? You may be surrounded by people, but inside you it feels like a desert. A loneliness that is not physical, is existential. You smile on the outside, but inside you scream. He walks through the corridors of life, crosses eyes, hears voices, but still feels as if he is slowly disappearing. And this invisible loneliness, this crushing silence, this absence of someone who really sees what's going on inside you, that's what hurts the most. But Jesus speaks to you now, and he says, "I see you." Before any word, before any solution, before even a change, comes this certainty that changes everything. He sees you. The name that Hagar gives to God, El Roy, is unique in the entire Bible, the God who sees, and that is too powerful to ignore, because to truly be seen is to have your existence validated. It's as if God said, I see your story, your wounds, your struggle to continue when everything says it's best to stop. At the moment when Hagar felt most useless, God calls her by name. He does not call her Sarah's servant or the Egyptian. He says, Hagar, because when God looks at you, he doesn't just see what you do, he sees who you are. Have you ever wondered why you feel so alone, even with so many people around? Have you ever thought that perhaps this pain of invisibility is precisely the space that God wants to fill? He wants to show you that even when no one else pays attention, he is attentive to every detail of your suffering. You have not been forgotten. You are not a mistake. You are not lost in this desert by chance. There is an appointment between you and God right there, in that place where you thought everything had ended. If this word spoke to you, if you felt that you were seen by God at that moment, write in the comments, Jesus sees me, because this simple statement could be the key that will open the eyes of other hearts that are also crying out in silence. Don't underestimate the power of your testimony. Someone may be waiting for this exact confirmation, to know they are not alone. But that's not all. Something even deeper is about to be revealed. Because there is a storm that doesn't happen outside. It happens inside the mind. And when thoughts accelerate, when the heart finds no pause, that's when Jesus comes in with his peace like no one else can. Elijah was exhausted. The prophet who faced the prophets of Baal alone, who saw fire fall from the sky and God act in a supernatural way, now ran in fear. After a great moment of faith came the emotional collapse. Jezebel swore to kill him, and he fled. Not just to save his own life, but he fled because he could no longer bear to live. In 1 Kings 19, we find a man of God lying under a juniper tree asking to die. Enough, take my life, Lord. The same Elijah who saw the power of God was now just a tired body on the ground, a collapsing mind, a soul suffocated by its own thoughts. He didn't want to fight anymore. And have you ever felt this way? What consumes Elijah is not just fear, but the noise within him, a whirlwind of thoughts, doubts, pressure, loneliness. When the mind spirals, it's as if there is no break. You try to sleep and the thoughts won't let you. You try to focus and everything seems disorganized. You breathe, but your chest doesn't ease. Elias isolates himself in the cave because his interior was already isolated long before. This is the pain that so many know but few have the courage to admit. The racing mind, the restless soul, the anxiety that allows neither rest nor communion. And in this internal chaos, it seems impossible to hear God. But Jesus speaks to you now. And this is where everything changes. Because in the midst of Elijah's mental storm, God does not shout. He does not send thunder. He doesn't force entry. God manifests himself like a gentle breeze. This is deeply revealing. Because while the world screams, God whispers. He doesn't compete with the clutter of thoughts. He waits for the heart to become silent enough to realize, I am here. The peace that God offers does not come from what is around. It comes from knowing that he is there, even when everything inside you is out of control. How many times have you sought noisy answers, immediate solutions, booming signals? But what God wants to teach you is that his presence is subtle but transformative. It is in the silence of the heart that the whisper of healing is heard. Elijah thought he was alone, but God was already on his side even before the outcry. Maybe you feel like you've lost control, that you won't make it, that no one understands. But God understands, and he speaks to you in a way that only those who are attentive can hear. Because healing the mind does not come from strength, it comes from surrender. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, I choose to listen to God's breeze. This statement can be an invitation to the inner silence you so desperately need. Share this word with someone who is surrounded by noise but thirsts for peace. Maybe this gentle breeze is all his heart needs to hear right now. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there is a guilt that eats away at us. The fear of failing spiritually, of disappointing God himself. And the next story proves that even those who fall are still seen with love. Pedro was impulsive, passionate, fearless. He was the one who jumped from promises straight to action. When everyone hesitated, he spoke. When others retreated, he advanced. This is how he swore to Jesus. Even if everyone abandons you, I will never deny you. and deep down, he believed it. But the human heart is fragile under pressure. When fear strikes, when the crowd tightens, when looks turn with accusation, something breaks inside. And that's exactly what happened to Pedro. Night fell, Jesus was arrested, and Peter, the same one who cut off a soldier's ear out of love, now denies knowing his master. 3 times. And the rooster crows. That chant echoed like a cry of guilt. Not only did Peter remember the words of Jesus, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." He felt each letter like an open wound. How to face your own failure. How can you look at the sky when you feel unworthy to even bend your knees? Spiritual guilt is a silent prison. It's that voice inside you that says, "You have failed. God is disappointed. There is no going back." And maybe that's exactly what's crushing your heart today. Not other people's fault, but yours. The shame of not having been strong enough, of having given up, of having denied what I believed. The anxiety that comes from doubt. Am I still loved by God after this? But Jesus speaks to you now, and what he says changes everything. Because he didn't look for Peter to accuse him. Jesus has risen, and among the first to whom he reveals himself is the one who denied him. This is no coincidence. This is redemption. Jesus appears on the beach and asks a simple question. "Peter, do you love me?" He doesn't ask why he fell. He doesn't demand explanations. He gets straight to the point. Is the love still there? Because if love still pulses, restoration is possible. Peter, who was drowning in guilt, hears from Jesus himself that he still has purpose, that he is still called, that he is still worthy. How many times have you asked yourself if God forgives you? If he still wants you close even after your failures? The answer is clear. Yes, because Jesus is not looking for perfection. He is calling sincere hearts. And even when you deny him with attitudes, with omissions, with words spoken out of pain, he still sees you as a son, not as a traitor. And that is the most powerful liberation there is, knowing that you are loved even on your worst days. Pedro cried bitterly after the denial, but it was this crying that prepared the ground for the reunion. Because when repentance is true, grace runs to meet it. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, "Jesus restores me." Your statement can break the chains of guilt that have paralyzed you for years. And maybe your testimony of falling and starting over is the hope that another heart needs to hear right now. But that's not all. Something even deeper is about to emerge. Because there is a type of pain that you can't see on the outside, but gnaws at you from the inside. The tiredness of fighting every day and feeling like nothing changes. Get ready. What comes next will touch a wound that many hide, but that Jesus wants to heal now. He had already faced arrests, persecution, and floggings. He had already been stoned, rejected, slandered, but nothing hurt him as much as that invisible thorn. Paul, the apostle to the nations, the man who wrote much of the New Testament, confessed with brutal honesty. There was something inside him that tormented him day and night. He called it a thorn in the flesh. We don't know exactly what it was, an illness, an emotional trauma, a spiritual crisis, but we know what that caused. Exhaustion, a tiredness that was not visible on the outside but gnawed on the inside, a weight that could not be lifted either by fasting or prayer. He prayed 3 times asking God to remove it, and heaven's response was silence, until Jesus spoke to him. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This moment changes everything, because it shows that healing does not always come as we expect. Sometimes God doesn't lift the weight, it strengthens the shoulders. Sometimes he doesn't remove the desert, he makes water spring up in his midst. Paulo wanted relief, God offered grace, and not just any grace, but sufficient grace. Strong, stable, gift. Have you ever felt this way? Fighting something that doesn't go away? Carrying a pain that no one sees, but that slowly consumes your faith? You may wake up tired even after sleeping. Maybe the smile you put on your face every day hides a battle that no one imagines. There is a type of anxiety that has no clinical name, but that sucks energy from the soul, the tiredness of fighting every day without seeing results. And at that point, many give up. They stop praying. They stop believing. They think they are abandoned, forgotten by God. But what if I told you that the Apostle Paul himself went through this? What if I told you that even he thought he was too weak to continue? The truth is that God's strength does not manifest itself when we are at our peak. It reveals itself in the valley. No crying. The moment you say, "I can't take it anymore," that's where grace comes in. And not as a beautiful theological concept, but as a living force that sustains your body, your mind, your faith. Grace is not the absence of pain, it is the presence of God in the midst of pain. When Paul understood this, something inside him changed. He stopped resisting and began to rest, not because the thorn was removed, but because the presence of Jesus became greater than the pain. You don't need to understand everything you are experiencing right now, but you need to believe that there is a grace involving you at this very moment, a grace that doesn't give up on you, who is not scandalized by his weakness, who doesn't turn his face away from his tiredness. On the contrary, she hugs you, supports you, and whispers, "You will make it, not by strength, not by merit, but by my grace." If you are struggling every day and feel like you are at your limit, write in the comments, "Your grace sustains me." You may be closer to a miracle than you think. Your testimony of persistence will renew the faith of others who, like you, are tired but still have hope. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. Because there are moments when anxiety does not suffocate the body, but faith. And when you feel like God is silent, when even praying seems in vain, is He still listening? What you are about to discover will change the way you view God's silence. David had already faced giants, lions, armies. But now what was suffocating him was not a spear, a sword, or a battlefield. It was silence. In Psalm 13, he does not cry out with declarations of victory or songs of confidence. He cries out in anguish, like someone drowning in unanswered questions. "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" These are words torn from someone who knows the presence of God but can no longer feel it. Of those who have already experienced miracles, but are now invaded by a darkness that seems endless. This is the prayer of those who don't even have the strength to pray properly, but still choose to talk to God. How many times have you felt this way? Knowing that God exists but wondering if He is still there. Trying to pray but the words won't come out. Opening the Bible but everything seems lifeless. Going to worship but feeling emptier than when you arrived. This silent anguish is more common than you might think, and it is not a sign of lack of faith. It's just the opposite. It's a sign that, even without understanding, you're still searching. Even without feeling it, you still cry out. Because doubt is also a prayer, and the cry of the heart is never ignored by God. David was not being flippant or ungrateful. He was being human. I was exposing what many try to hide for fear of appearing spiritually weak. But the Bible never hid the vulnerability of its heroes. And maybe that's why it heals so much. Because it shows us that even the anointed cry, that even the chosen ones go into deep crises, that even those who have been called by God have days when heaven seems closed. But here's the wow moment. Even at the height of his pain, David ends Psalm 13 by saying, "But I trust in your mercy. My heart will rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because you have done me great good." How does one get past until when to "I trust"? The answer lies in one detail. David does not wait for the pain to pass to trust. He trusts her. Because true faith is not the one that sings after victory. She's the one who loves it even without seeing a way out. It's the one who chooses to trust God's character when feelings say otherwise. It is the one who understands that Jesus speaks to you even when He seems silent. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now. Even in silence, I trust. Your testimony could be the breath that someone next to you needs to continue. Don't underestimate the power of your vulnerability. God turns tears into hope, but that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because while David cried for not feeling God, in another scene, Jesus multiplied bread where there was only scarcity. What you are about to discover will change the way you see what today seems like too little. The crowd was hungry. The day was already declining, and the disciples looked around and saw only scarcity, hunger, tiredness, despair. 5,000 men, not counting women and children, in a deserted field far from any resources. Anxiety hung in the air like late afternoon heat. "Send the people away," the disciples said to Jesus. But He instead responded with something that shatters all human logic. "Give them something to eat yourselves." As with what? They only had 5 loaves and 2 fish. What would that solve in the face of so much need? Maybe you are right there right now, seeing only what is missing. The money that is not enough, the time that is not enough, the strength that is gone. Financial anxiety isn't just the fear of running out. It's the weight of having to make ends meet when you know you can't. It's waking up with a heavy heart, calculating bills before you even open your eyes. It's praying, and when you finish, feeling that nothing has changed. It's asking yourself if God really sees how much you're struggling. But Jesus' response to the hungry crowd wasn't just a miracle of multiplication, it was a revelation of how he works with those who feel they have too little. He did not ask the disciples for more than they had. He just asked for everything they had. Because when you give little into his hands, heaven comes into motion. They only had 5 loaves and 2 fish. Matthew 14 highlights this on purpose. The text emphasizes the limitation. The narrative does not hide the scarcity, because that's precisely where the miracle begins, in the sincere recognition that you don't have enough. Jesus takes that little, raises it to the heavens, thanks it, and hands it over. And something supernatural happens. Nobody understands how, but they all feed each other. And in the end, there are still 12 full baskets left. This isn't just about food. It's about grace. It's about how Jesus speaks to you through the leftovers, saying that what seemed like there wasn't enough went beyond. Anxiety says it's never enough. Faith, on the contrary, surrenders and trusts that Jesus is. If this word strengthened you, write in the comments, "I trust the little I have." Because when little is given with faith, it becomes abundance in the hands of God. Your testimony could be the bread that's missing from someone's emotional table today, but that's not all. There is a secret hidden in those who think they are too small to be used. And what comes next will change the way you see your own story. It was night, and all around Gideon was fear. The land was devastated by enemies, resources were scarce, and the people hid in caves. Israel's heart was torn, and Gideon's even more so. He could barely see himself as someone worthy of attention. When the angel of the Lord appeared and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor," Gideon, looking at himself, could only respond, "But I am the least of my house, and my family is the poorest in the tribe." And maybe that's exactly how you feel today, comparing yourself to others, thinking that you are too small, too weak, too inadequate to be chosen by God. Anxiety arises there, when you believe that you need to be more than you are, and that the little you have is not enough. But the truth is different. God doesn't choose you based on what the world sees. He calls you by what he has already placed inside you. While you diminish yourself, he points to you as an instrument of liberation. Gideon thought he was the smallest, but it was with him that God decided to free Israel. And it was not with numerous armies nor with human strength. It was with a strategy so absurd that it could only come from the sky. God said, "You have too many soldiers." And he reduced Gideon's army to just 300 men. Why? So that it would be clear that victory does not come from the strength of the arm, but from the presence of the Lord. Have you ever thought that maybe this constant comparison that you make with others is keeping you away from what God wants to do in you? The anxiety of not feeling enough is not about lack of ability, but about not understanding that sufficiency comes from him. The world says you have to be the best, always be one step ahead, prove your worth. Jesus says, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness." Heaven is not looking for the most talented. It is looking for the most available. I am the youngest in my family. Judges 6:15 records this line to remind us that God loves to use those the world ignores. Your insecurity may be the space where he most wants to live. And the comparison? It only steals peace. Because you were created with a unique calling. And what God will do in you doesn't need to look like what he does in anyone else. If you have ever felt small, invisible, or inferior, comment now. God uses me anyway. Your comment can free someone who still believes they are not enough, to be loved and called. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. Because sometimes what seems like abandonment is just the scene of the miracle that God is about to reveal. The sky was dark that day. The clouds not only covered the sun, but seemed to carry the weight of a screaming silence. And amid screams, blood, and pain, Jesus, the Son of God, hanging on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27:46. This moment tears the heart of whoever reads it. It's not just physical suffering. It is the abandonment felt in the soul. The Son, who has always been in communion with the Father, now feels the emptiness, feel the silence. And this cry is so human, so ours. Because how many times have you felt like God was silent just when you needed him most? Abandonment anxiety is one of the cruelest. It has no form, but it has presence. It doesn't bleed, but it hurts. She doesn't scream, but freezes. It's that feeling of praying and not feeling an answer, of crying out and feeling like the only answer is the echo of your own voice. Maybe you are living this right now. A destroyed relationship, an illness that insists on staying, a dream that fell apart. And even with faith, you wonder, where is God? The pain of abandonment is not in the fact of being alone, but in believing that even God has left you. But what if I told you that this feeling is an echo of what Jesus also felt? That he knows exactly what this silence is? Jesus' cry on the cross was not the end. It was the climax before victory, because even when God seems to be silent, he is still acting. While you feel like he isn't listening, he is preparing something that goes beyond your understanding. Perceived absence is not real absence. On the cross, God was more present than ever, and the same happens with you. Anxiety makes you believe that if you don't feel it, then God isn't there. But the truth is that God is closer than your breath, more present than your thoughts, more faithful than your emotions allow you to perceive. Have you ever cried believing that no one sees you? Have you ever wondered if your prayers really reach heaven? Jesus too. And that's why he can have compassion on you, because he is not a distant God sitting on a cold throne, oblivious to your suffering. He is the God who went to the cross, who experienced the pain of abandonment so that today you would know, even if everything says otherwise, you are not alone. There is a presence in the midst of your despair. There is a hand extended in the middle of the void. There is hope in silence. If this word touched something deep inside you, comment, even without feeling it, I believe. Your comment can heal hearts that, like yours, feel the weight of a seemingly mute sky. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because when fear paralyzes, faith opens paths that not even the sea can close. The people were trapped. Ahead, the Red Sea. Behind, Pharaoh's army. There was nowhere to run. Fear took over like a thick, suffocating shadow. Mothers grabbed their children. Men trembled. Old men prayed in silence. A collective panic took over hearts that had already suffered too much in Egypt. They had left with hope, but now, faced with an impossible obstacle, it seemed to slip through their hands like sand. It was in this scenario, in this moment where anxiety turns into total paralysis, that God spoke through Moses. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. The Lord will fight for you. You just need to be still. Exodus 14:14. But how can you stay still when everything inside you screams? How to rest when your mind is at war, when decisions need to be made and every choice seems wrong. This is the pain that many live today. The racing heart, the pressure in the chest, the feeling that any step could be a mistake. Fear paralysis is sneaky. She hides behind thoughts like, what if it doesn't work out? What if I regret it? What if God is not with me? It's an invisible prison. You want to move, but you can't. You pray, but you only receive silence. And in that silence, you think you are alone. But there is something profound hidden in this Exodus episode. God did not tell the people to run. He didn't order us to fight. He told me to stand firm. He told me to trust. Because there are moments in life when faith is not about what you do, but about what you decide to believe while everything seems to say otherwise. Anxiety tries to convince you that you need to solve everything on your own, that if you don't act now, you will miss the opportunity, you will fail. But faith, true faith, teaches you to hope, even when you tremble. Standing firm, even when everything around you screams, get it over with. Have you ever felt this way? Stuck between fear of the past and uncertainty of the future? Stuck between what you've already suffered and what you still don't know, how you're going to face? The sea before you seems impassable. But what if I told you that the sea is not an obstacle but a stage? A stage for God to show that where his strength ends, the miracle begins? What you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Because when the people had no more strength, God opened the sea, not because they did something extraordinary, but because they trusted, even though they were afraid. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. When God acts, even that which is as solid as water bows before him. The sea obeys. The impossible becomes the path. What seemed like an end turns into a passage. And maybe that's what Jesus is trying to show you today. That the anxiety that paralyzes you does not define your destiny. That the fear that blocks you does not have the final say. That your paralysis is just the perfect setting for God to say, you just need to trust. I'm fighting for you. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, I trust in the God who opens paths. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today, but that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because true peace is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of Jesus even in the midst of the storm. The boat rocked violently. The waves rushed in furiously, and the disciples struggled to maintain control, but the water invaded from all sides. It was night, dark as the soul of someone who suffers without knowing when the pain will end. Panic spread like wildfire, screams, rush, despair, and in the midst of all this, Jesus slept. He was there in the same boat, lying down, serene, at peace, sleeping in the middle of the storm. It seemed almost offensive. How could anyone sleep when everyone was about to die? "Master, do you not care if we perish?" they cried. And then, with a simple raise of his voice, Jesus calmed the sea. But before that, he had calmed something even more violent, the hearts of those men. This scene reveals something we urgently need to hear. The peace we seek outside is often being offered within. Insomnia, agitation, racing thoughts, restlessness. All of this is a reflection of a heart that has not yet found rest in Jesus. Sleeping seems impossible when your mind is at war. Resting becomes a luxury when your heart is heavy. You lie down, but you don't rest. Close your eyes, but don't silence. He turns from side to side, hoping that perhaps sleep will come as a relief, but he doesn't come. Because what's missing is not physical tiredness. It is spiritual peace. How many times have you woken up more tired than you went to sleep? How many nights have you spent trying to resolve in your mind what only God could resolve in your spirit? There is a hard truth here. The enemy of your peace is not the noise outside, but the noise inside. And that's where Jesus comes in. He doesn't promise that the sea will stop shaking, but he promises to be in the boat with you. And if Jesus is on the boat, chaos has no authority. If Jesus is with you, the storm will not drown you. Maybe you are trying to control everything to feel safe, but your soul is exhausted. What if I told you that the secret to peace is not trying to hold everything in, but letting go? That the key to rest is to stop fighting in the place where Jesus has already won for you? When he sleeps in the middle of the storm, he is teaching you. Peace does not depend on what happens outside, but on who is inside your boat. He's saying, you can sleep too. I'm here. If this message is touching your heart, say in the comments, "Jesus, I give my rest to you." Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. And here comes the most amazing part of this story. The most profound miracle was not the sea calming down, but the revelation that even when everything is out of place, Jesus remains in perfect control, and he is about to reveal something even more powerful. The darkness of the pit was thick. No lights, no sounds, just the suffocating silence of a death sentence. Daniel was there, surrounded by lions, hungry predators that, at any moment, could devour him. But there was something about that scene that didn't make sense. The calm on his face. Daniel didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't despair. Because, deep down, he knew God was there. Even in that place where human logic said there was no way out, the presence of the Lord made the difference. The miracle began even before the lion fell silent. It started when Daniel decided to trust. How many times have you felt this way? In a dark emotional pit, with fears surrounding you like lions, ready to tear you apart. The medical diagnosis, the unexpected dismissal, the betrayal, the financial crisis, the negative thoughts that scream louder than faith. You look around and see no doors. It doesn't see windows. He doesn't see a future, just walls that close in, as if life is slowly squeezing your chest, as if saying, here is the end. But what if I told you that this grave that today seems like an end is in fact the beginning of something supernatural? Daniel did not pray to escape the pit. He prayed to remain faithful, and it was this fidelity that brought the angel. My God sent his angel, he declared, with the conviction of someone who knows the character of those he serves. And today that same truth echoes within your battle. Where man cannot enter, God sends angels. Where you don't reach, God touches. Where you remain silent, God speaks. Where you stop, God acts. And when everything says, there is no way out, Jesus speaks to you, I am the way. There is something profound about this story. Daniel was not spared from the pit. He was protected within it. This changes everything, because it's not about avoiding difficult times. It's about getting through them without being destroyed, about being within the impossible and still remaining in one piece. It's about seeing the teeth of the problem and knowing that none of them are allowed to touch you, God forbid. This is not religiosity. It is living faith, real, timeless. If this word sparked faith in you, write in the comments, even in the grave I trust in God. Your comment could be the hand that lifts someone who is at rock bottom today. And here comes something that can change the way you see your struggles. Daniel only saw the miracle because he entered the pit. Maybe what you are experiencing today is not the end. It is the stage, the scenario where God will reveal himself like never before. She couldn't pretend anymore. The disguised smiles in front of others, the words rehearsed to appear strong, the eyes that looked away to hide the crying. All of this no longer supported the pain that Anna carried inside her chest. Day after day, she went up to the temple with her heart in pieces. There were no children in her arms, but there were promises in her spirit. And yet, every time I prayed, it seemed like heaven was silent. She was there, with a bitter soul, praying, in tears, without even making a sound. And it was precisely in this place of extreme brokenness that God leaned in. How many times has your heart screamed without a voice? You try to pray, but you can't find the words. You just feel this tightness that comes out of nowhere and stays with you all day long. A restlessness that drains your energy. A sadness that seems to have no cause, but that steals your peace. Have you ever found yourself crying in the middle of a common routine without knowing why? You've tried talking to someone, but no one seems to understand. It's okay, they say, but you know you're not. There is a noise inside your soul that no one can hear, but Jesus can do it. And he responds. Anna was injured, humiliated. She was constantly teased by Penina, who had what she dreamed of. The comparison was an open wound, and the temple, his refuge. But it wasn't the beautiful speech that caught God's attention. It was the sincere, desperate, broken cry. The Bible says that she prayed with an anguished heart, and that she wept profusely. It was too much pain to keep, and too much faith to abandon. And it was in this silent prayer that God saw what no one else could see. Because he is not impressed by well-crafted words, he moves before torn hearts. It is in this place that the answer is born. She prayed with a bitter soul. 1 Samuel 1:10. This is the description of many people around you who don't have the courage to confess. People who continue to go to church but no longer feel anything. People who post verses but live in crisis. People who pray but don't hear an answer. Maybe it's you. Maybe today, right now, your heart is saying, Lord, how long? Restlessness, insomnia, anxiety, disguised as productivity. All of this has drained your strength. But listen carefully. Hannah prayed and saw nothing change that day. But at that very moment, God began to write a miracle. If this word found an echo in your heart, write in the comments, Jesus listens even to my silence. Your comment may be the answer someone else needs to continue believing. And here's something that can change the way you see God's silence. What seems like absence is sometimes preparation. Anna's womb was empty, but the sky was already full of purpose. You don't need to fake strength. You can cry. You can scream in thought. You can pray like Hannah, with tears without a voice but with faith, because Jesus speaks to you even when you can't speak to him. Solomon was young, inexperienced, and suddenly found himself king. Imagine carrying on your shoulders the weight of leading an entire nation, with its wars, disputes, injustices, and decisions that could bless or ruin thousands of lives. He did not ask for wealth. He didn't ask for victories. He asked for wisdom. Because I knew that one wrong choice could cost everything. And deep down, he was afraid. Fear of making a bad decision. Fear of making mistakes with your people. Fear of failing before God. Fear of not knowing how to discern between what is right and what is almost right. And who has never felt this way? Locked in the middle of a maze of possibilities, paralyzed by the fear of taking the next step and everything falling apart? Give your servant an understanding heart. 1 Kings 3:9. This wasn't just a beautiful prayer, it was a cry for help. And maybe it's the same silent scream that's trapped inside you, because deciding hurts. Choosing requires courage. And often it is at the moment of decision that anxiety overwhelms you the most. You fear making the wrong choice in work, in relationships, in faith. You fear disappointing others. Fear of not hearing the right voice. The world's pressure for constant success suffocates you. But there is a spiritual key that can transform this paralysis into direction. Discernment. Not the one that comes from human formulas, but the one that springs from intimacy with God. Have you ever noticed how anxiety explodes the moment you are faced with conflicting options? Your mind starts generating scenarios, reviewing possibilities, simulating consequences, predicting failure, and suddenly you are emotionally exhausted without having left your seat. Solomon could have trusted his intelligence or his advisors, but he chose something radical. He stopped everything and sought divine wisdom. And when he asked God for a heart that knew how to listen, discern, decide, the sky opened over his life. God didn't just give him what he asked for, he gave much more. Because when you prioritize wisdom, you also receive provision, peace, and purpose. Wrong decisions are not just born from a lack of information, but from a lack of connection with God. Therefore, Solomon's prayer needs to be yours today. Before taking any action, before taking any step, silence everything around you and say, Lord, give me an understanding heart. It's not about knowing everything. It is about listening to the one who knows all things. It's about shutting down your fear to hear the Father's voice. Often, it's not that you're without direction. It's that there are too many voices speaking at once, and the only one you really need to hear is being drowned out by the noise of doubt. If this message spoke to you, comment, Jesus, direct my steps. Your comment may not only bless someone facing the same dilemma, but it may also be the first step in releasing God's answer into your life. What you are about to discover will change the way you see everything. The wisdom you seek is not far away. It does not require mystical formulas or unattainable spiritual merits. It is available now, within the reach of a sincere prayer. God does not require you to always get it right, but he wants you to invite him to decide with you. And when that happens, even difficult choices become paths of peace. Jesus speaks to you, and he is saying, trust me before you decide. I will show you the best way. Jonah was a prophet, a man called by God with a clear purpose and a defined mission. But when God sends him to Nineveh, a city he despised, with people he deemed unworthy, something inside Jonah breaks. And instead of obeying, he decides to run away. Not just the call, not just in the city. Jonah tries to escape the presence of God. He buys a ticket, boards a ship heading to Tarshish, and heads in the opposite direction of the divine will. Because sometimes the human heart tries to escape what it most needs to face. And who hasn't done the same? Who has never wanted to disappear from the map, sleep and wake up in another place, where the pain doesn't follow? Jonah fled from the presence of the Lord. Jonah 1-3. These words carry a silent pain, all too familiar to anyone overwhelmed by anxiety, because the desire to escape does not always come from something external. She is born inside, in a place where fears grow in disarray. We run away from decisions, we run away from relationships. We run away from confrontations, from responsibilities. But most of all, we run away from ourselves. And when the mind is overloaded, anxiety at maximum level, the first fantasy that arises is, if I disappeared, all of this would disappear together. But have you ever noticed that pain follows you? That even when changing places, routines, people, the emptiness goes with it? Jonah thought the sea would be his hiding place, but the storm found him. And sometimes it takes the boat to rock to the limit for us to realize we can't run away from God. You can't run away from the love that persists, that pursues, that launches itself into the waves to rescue you. Even when you give up on yourself, God doesn't give up on you. And maybe today the wind of your life is strong because the sky is screaming, son, come back. You think you're running away for self-preservation, but you're just delaying healing. Escape is a disguise. The truth is that you are begging for a fresh start, for a hug that says, there's still time. And the most impactful thing about this story is not the storm, it's not the fish, it's not fear. It is the fact that even on the run, even in rebellion, even trying to disappear from the spiritual map, God speaks to Jonah. God sends the sea, the fish, and then the second chance. Because Jesus speaks to you even when you turn your back, even when you say, I don't want it anymore, even when you lock yourself in your room and wish it would all end. He enters. He finds it. He rescues. Jonah was at the bottom of the sea inside a fish, shrouded in darkness, and yet God heard him. This breaks any human logic. And that's exactly why this story still transforms hearts. You may feel like you're in the belly of this fish right now, in a dark, suffocating place where there is no sign of exit. You may be believing that this is your punishment, that what you are experiencing is a consequence of wrong choices. But listen carefully. God does not send the fish to punish Jonah. God sends the fish to save him from death. The situation you think is the end of you may actually be the beginning of your redemption, because the presence of God finds you where no one else can reach you. He goes to the bottom of the sea, to the depths of your pain, and says, there's still life there. There's still purpose. Your escape is not the end. It is the point where God's love reaches you in full force. If this message spoke to your heart, Comment now. Jesus, meet me where I am. Your comment could be a beacon to another life that is in the same darkness. What's more, it could be the first step to stop running away. God doesn't want you to run away. He wants you to be free. But freedom only happens when you stop running and start trusting, start delivering. He begins to say, I'll come back. I'll come back because I know that the Lord still wants me. If this word touched you deeply, click the like button. This may seem small, but it is a spiritual act, because by liking, you help this message reach someone who may be on the verge of escaping, who is tired, overwhelmed, but still doesn't. Know that there is a God following his soul, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do so now, not to feed numbers, but so that you receive more words that will remind you, every day, that you are not alone, that there is a greater purpose calling you back, that the voice that calls you by name is the same one that calms the storm and transforms rock bottom into an altar of new beginnings. And here's something you may have never heard. Even if you run to the end of the world, you won't find rest apart from the heart of God, because it's not the escape that cures, it's the return. And when you turn around, even if you are completely broken, he restores you, he rebuilds you, he sends you again. Jesus speaks to you. Even when you think he is silent, he is surrounding you with grace. He walked slowly, his bare feet on the hard earth, his heart crushed by a mixture of guilt, shame, and longing. Each step was a weight, each memory an open wound. The smell of food in his Father's house, the laughter of the servants, the warmth of acceptance, all of that now seemed like a distant, almost inaccessible dream. He had left confidently, demanding his inheritance as if he knew what to do with it, as if freedom were enough to fill the void he himself did not yet understand. But days away from home revealed another truth. Freedom without direction is a desert, and it was in this emotional desert that he lost himself. Hunger hit, misery embraced him, and the silence consumed him. Not even the pigs wanted to share what they ate with him. At that moment, the prodigal son, previously full of reason and independence, realized that he had exchanged everything he was for a false promise of plenitude, and there was nothing lonelier than realizing that true love had been abandoned. While he was still far away, the father saw him and, full of compassion, ran to his son and hugged him and kissed him. Luke 15:20. This verse is not just the climax of the biblical story. It is God's cry for all those who today are on the verge of an emotional collapse, feeling unworthy, dirty, distant, because the Father's love does not demand perfection, it only demands a step back. How many times have you felt this way too? Guilty of walking away? Ashamed for not being able to keep your faith unshakable? Afraid of returning and not being welcomed as before? There are people who live for years trapped in this fear. They no longer pray, they no longer seek, they no longer allow themselves to feel the presence of God because they believe they have gone too far, who have already done the unforgivable. But the truth is that the Father sees you even when you are still far away. He recognizes you by your walk, by the pain in your eyes, by your choked voice. He doesn't expect you to come back clean. He runs towards you exactly when he sees you dirty, tired, broken. What you were taught about God's love may be incomplete. They said you need to earn it. That needs to be standing up to be accepted, that you need to fix your life before opening your mouth in prayer. But what if I told you that the biggest secret in this story is that the hug came before the request for forgiveness? The Father did not wait for explanations. No justification required. He just ran. Because when Jesus talks to you, he is not interested in your spiritual resume. He wants to heal your broken heart. Free you from the anxiety that says you are not worthy. Free you from the guilt that screams, you failed too much. Free you from the lie that repeats you are alone. If this word is touching you, declare with faith in the comments, Jesus found me before I even came back. This might be what someone desperate needs to read right now. Your public confession of faith could be the miracle that renews the heart of someone who is on the verge of giving up. And if this message is touching your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Your simple gesture can reach lives that, like you, thought were too far away to be loved. There is a moment in life when all routes are exhausted, when no pleasure holds back the pain, when no plan makes sense anymore, when everything seems to have lost its taste and your heart begins to scream for something you once had, but forgot, the presence of the Father. The prodigal son did not return out of remorse. He came back out of nostalgia. And it is this longing that is perhaps burning inside you right now. longing to feel peace when you close your eyes, longing to sleep without fear, to breathe without guilt, to live without hiding your heart. Are you far away? Is it broken? Are you embarrassed? Jesus speaks to you now, and he's saying, "Son, come home. I haven't given up on you. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what they said. The Father is still with open arms, and he runs. Run towards him. Because real love doesn't walk. It runs to find those who need saving. And this love has a name. That love is Jesus. He is the answer to that overwhelming anxiety you feel. It is the end of comparison, of pressure, of fear. He's the hug you'll never want to leave. And you know what's even more surprising? The Father didn't just hug, he gave back. He ordered his Son to be dressed in the best robe. He put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. This is more than acceptance. It's restoration. And that's what the Lord wants to do with you. He doesn't just want to welcome you. He wants to restore you, give you back what pain stole: confidence, joy, inner freedom. This is the true identity of children. Loved, forgiven, restored. And no one, absolutely no one, is too far away for that. You don't need to hide anymore. You don't need to punish yourself anymore. The time has come to return. And when you take the first step, you will find that he is already running. Because even before you decided to come back, he was already watching the horizon, waiting for the moment to meet you again. And when he embraces you, all the guilt will fall away. All fear will dissolve. All anxiety will silence. Because when the love of Jesus reaches you, nothing remains the same. What you are about to experience will change the way you see everything. If you've come this far, it's because there's something bigger happening inside you. You may not even be able to explain it, but you felt it. He felt a presence. He felt something move what was trapped. He felt that the pain that seemed unbearable now found a breathing space. This is not just another video. It's a date, a calling, a silent cry from heaven saying, "I am still here, and I still choose you." You fought so hard to keep up appearances, to smile even when everything was falling apart inside. He tried to be strong when all he wanted was simply a hug that said, "You are not alone." Today, this hug has a name. Jesus speaks to you, and there is no charge. It's with healing. He looks at you with eyes that don't judge but restore. It's no coincidence that you're watching this far. It's purpose. It is God tearing away your defenses, undoing the knots of anxiety, tenderly leading you to a place where you can finally rest. You heard every story, saw yourself in every pain, felt like every word seemed written for you. And that wasn't imagination. It was the Holy Spirit touching your heart with surgical precision, reaching you where no one else has access. You are no longer hidden. You don't need to run away anymore. You no longer need to anesthetize yourself with distractions or pretend that everything is fine. The truth is that you need a reunion with your essence, with your identity in God. The time has come to pray. But first, close your eyes and feel. Feel the weight going away. Feel the presence that now enters this environment. Feel that love does not require explanations. It simply welcomes. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to be embraced by this peace. The prayer we are going to say now is not an empty repetition. It's a delivery. It is a silent cry of the soul that can no longer bear living crushed by guilt, anxiety, and fear. Repeat after me, out, loud or in your heart, but truly. Lord Jesus, today I return. Maybe I got lost. Maybe I fell silent. Maybe I believed I was too far away. But today I heard your voice, and it called me by name. Today I surrender the weight that destroys me. I surrender the fear that paralyzes me. I surrender the anxiety that suffocates me, and I receive your love. Heal me, Lord. Free my mind, my heart, my emotions. Restore in me what the world tried to destroy. Today I come home, and I place myself in your arms. Jesus, talk to me every day. If you've come this far, it's because God is working in your life. And what you're feeling right now is just the beginning. Because what comes next could be what was needed for your complete liberation. The next video on the screen is the continuation of this journey, and you cannot miss it. Something powerful is being released, and you will understand why certain moments in your life were so intense. If this message spoke to you, what you will discover in the video that is on screen now could change your life even more. Don't leave without watching, because what comes next could be what's needed for your release. Comment below, "I made it to the end." This shows us that the Holy Spirit is touching lives until the end. Your comment could be the confirmation. Someone else needs to stand their ground. And more. Share this message with someone who needs to be found by this love. You can be the channel of salvation for a soul that is about to give up. And now, subscribe to the channel. Be part of this community where pain finds healing, where hearts are restored, and where Jesus speaks to you in every video. If this word touched you, respond by subscribing. It's your way of saying, God, I want more. We end with a verse that seals everything we experience here. The Lord is close to those who are brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalms 34:18. You are not alone, never was. And now, you're coming home. And the whole sky is celebrating your return. Get ready. The next video will move you even more. Don't miss it.